How dull.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Eric.
I'm Ty.
And we are ShantottoCast, back with our next final episode. This time we are ending because I got a new job.
Yeah, which I'm very happy about, but Eric works at a rival company to mine now, so we have to hate each other legally.
Yeah,
it was in both of our contracts.
We're probably going to kill each other after this episode is done recording.
Yeah.
So maybe Zombie Ty next time, or
Zombie Eric, or maybe just
I was gonna say just no Ty.
Oh, wow.
It's either Zombie Ty or no Ty.
Taking you down with me.
Okay, that's a threat.
By the way, joking aside, we do actually work at rival companies.
This is true, yeah. But I didn't get to name drop your company at the interview, and they were just like, "Oh, cool, yeah, you know who they are." I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
Cool.
So that was funny. But anyway, so this week, we are talking to you guys. Well, I say this week. This month?
This episode.
This episode. Yeah.
We're avoiding talking about time.
Yeah, time doesn't exist.
Yeah, we're just hardcore recording just like 3 episodes today, so we're just like avoiding any time. Yeah. We're avoiding dating these episodes.
You don't know when they're gonna come out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're talking about today budget archetypes, jobs, and synergy-centric decks that you can build on a budget. And then you can improve them later, or just leave them as is for just a cheap playable deck.
Yeah, like every day on the subreddit, I see a new player who just wants to find a cheap deck, or hey, how expensive are decks, or hey, I really like this, can I make a deck out of it? And a lot of those kind of just ended up on this list. Like a big thing that people, spoilers for the list, I suppose, people tend to gravitate towards Dragoons.
Yep.
People tend to gravitate towards Final Fantasy VII and a lot of that. So this is kind of a good episode to send to newer players, or just for newer players to listen to, of, hey, here's some budget decks, here's some budget archetypes that you can build pretty cheap. We're not gonna throw deck lists at you.
Those are easy enough to build yourself or find. This is basically like, the keywords that you want to look for. Yeah, for sure. You beat me to it.
Yeah. And then we'll just talk about how the decks function, and if
what
you're
they're
coming
good
off
for.
of another card game and you're like, oh, I really want to play like Red Deck Wins or something, or I really want to build like a wide board. You could listen to us talk and be like, oh, that sounds closer to like what I played in Magic, or what I played in Digimon, or what I played in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something like that.
Right. And if I had the editing skills, I would make a fancy transition to put, cards and stuff on the screen and make them look all fancy, but I'm not that good at editing yet, so I might include pictures, I might not. You'll deal with it either way. Yeah. So first up on the list, we have Chocobos. This is the first budget deck that I think many older players in the game built.
Yeah, I definitely had a Chocobo deck for a long while.
Yeah, you did before I did, and then I eventually did it too. But we're actually going to break these down if there are multiple variants of each type. We'll mention them each. Otherwise, just assume that they're going to be, just the first thing we mentioned. So there's 2 versions of Chocobos. One is Mono Wind, the other is Ice Wind. The Mono Wind version is an easy swarm deck. Has lots of search capability and some synergy. It's easy to tech in other wind engines, such as Crystal Chronicles or FFCC. But its downside is that it's a one-trick pony, and really the only way to improve it is to throw in other engines and utilize much stronger summons.
Yeah, just working. A lot of the non-budget parts of this deck are in the backups, are in the summons. Because Chocobos, as far as, will always be pretty cheap. You have a lot of good cards to rely on, like Chocobo Knight, Chocobo,
Black Chocobo, yeah.
But then you start getting to the backup lineup, and obviously you want to run like Fat Chocobo and maybe like a standard unit searcher, or you run Arc. But when you start getting into like FFCC and you want to build it a little bit more fancier,
Chalinka, Yuri, and some of the other fun stuff, it does get more expensive. So,
but otherwise, largely, like I want to say, like 99% of the builds of this deck are usually under like $3.
There's the cheap Chocobos deck that won a few tournaments last year, early in the year, like January and February. Were $4.40-something cents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, like, they're
just
extremely affordable. Yeah, it's all bulk, and then I think one expensive summon.
Yeah.
By expensive, I mean, like, $3. I mean, $3. Everything else was, like, really, literally bulk.
Yeah. And then another variant that we've seen of it before, and we've seen do very well, is Ice Wind, which has been jokingly called Cold Turkey.
Yep.
So this is a variant that, while it still is almost mostly wind. It's still like, I want to say 3/4 wind.
Correct.
You're teching in backup snow, which allows you to dull or tap an opponent's forward whenever you attack with a forward. And Shivas just to dull things. So you're literally just running ice, not to get rid of threats, not to like cancel threats, but to just tap them down so you could swing over them.
It's like an ostrich putting its head in the dirt, just to pretend you pretend the threats don't exist.
Exactly.
And then they don't.
Yeah.
That's how it works. I can't see it, therefore it can't hurt me.
Yeah, but this is a very like aggro deck. It's a very swarmy deck. Obviously, it loses to hard control variants, which is a lot of the game, to be honest. But it still has its strength. And the thing is, if you get going before the opponent can, you can still like steal.
Yeah, you can definitely put out. Yeah, you can get going.
Well, it's a bit old now, but that's what happened at Bahamut Brawl. During the grand finals, where we saw, I think it was a Chocobo deck versus Rampier.
Yeah,
and
something like that.
Just like set up too fast.
Yeah, well, it was funny because one of our friends messaged us a couple days after the event, and after he'd watched the video, and he's just like, the friggin' chickens won, and I'm like, yes, the chickens won.
Chickens won.
And so that's Chocobos. We can move on next to the Onion Knights, which a lot of people don't think of when they think of budget stuff.
Yeah.
But this is more or less a rainbow deck.
Yeah.
With a little bit more of a focus on wind because of Arc and Arc.
Yeah.
And other cards like Arc.
Yes. Standard unit support.
Yeah, basically.
Also a little water as well.
There's a couple Earth cards that support standard units. It's all over the place.
So the Onion Knight deck is basically built around one card, or 4 cards that have the same name, same effect, same stats, everything, but are 4 different colors, and that's Onion Knight 3. So Onion Knight 3 is a 1-drop 2K. And if you control 4 or more backups, and if the backups you control are all different elements, Onion Knight 3 gains 6,000 power. So a 1-drop 8K is way above.
That's nuts. Yeah,
that's really good. Sadly, they don't get like keywords or anything.
Well, yeah, but you can give them.
Yeah, but you can give them. They're 1-drops. They're very easy to recur. The only issue is you can't have 2 of the same color backup. Yeah. Which tends to make the whole deck a little rough.
Yeah.
But still, the value of just paying a 1-drop like forward that's 8K immediately is nothing to
like vanilla or not, doesn't matter. So an 8K is good. Most people who build this deck utilize the multicolor Moogles that tap for multiple colors. Because then you can just discard what you don't need, or you can you can do whatever you want. And then you can, of course, tech in anything that works with 1-drops and or standard units, which there's a plethora of Warrior of Light stuff that does that. There are also, what are they called? The Pugilist that works off of how many standard units you have in your front row.
Yeah, I brought up actually an old build of mine. And key cards were the Opus 10 Legend Warrior of Light, which is an incredibly cheap card. That's like $1 or $2.
When the set came out, that was like a $25 card, so I was selling them real easy.
Yeah, cards like Ingus, which allows you to play an Onion Knight for free when you play him. There's Arc that allows you to play...
The 5-drop Arc, the forward.
That allows you to reactivate them, or even play... Oh yeah, you get to play one on the field from Break Zone, which is nice. And then you have other cards that have the same kind of synergy.
You have the 6-drop Warrior of Light Earth one. That's another good one.
The 2-drop Kefka gets bonuses depending on how many different colors you have in your back row. And then, as you mentioned earlier, you have the Moogles that can tap for other colors. I built a very similar deck to yours, actually, and I think Aaron in our local play group, he leaned hard into this one. This is like his favorite pet deck right now. And so we've got quite a bit of exposure to this one as well. It's just a fun deck where everything is bulk. It's super cheap.
Yeah, everything is super cheap. Even the legends in that deck are super cheap. But if you want to throw in fancy summons, I've seen people throw in Diabolos and cards that give power to everything in forward.
If you want to do a weird fire build, you could throw in the Ifrit package. There's several ways to tackle this. If you want to do an Earth package, you could do a lot of stuff that buffs them up. There's a lot. It's a very versatile deck. It's very I don't want to say stretchy. It's word I'm looking for.
Flexible.
There we go. Flexible. It's a very flexible deck, depending on how you want to build it.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, we have the Mughals.
One rainbow deck to another.
Yep, this one features Sarah. This is kind of like, it's Ice and Wind mostly, but it has a bit of a rainbow idea to it still. Doesn't really have a particular color set that it is straight up, I can say these are the colors that are in it.
Yeah.
But one way or another, this is going to revolve around FF13's Sarah, the not as interesting younger sister of Lightning. And so basically the idea is that Sarah can search out Mughals and use them if they aren't played to your field. The reliance on Sarah, though, is a double-edged sword, but it's a really fun one if you use it right, because you can discard Mughals to dull things on your opponent's board. Yeah. I ran into this deck in California when I was out there. I think somebody jokingly called it the Frosty Mog, but I maybe misremembering. But I don't know where this came up, like where the original idea came from. Mm-hmm. I'd have been the guy I played against. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it was a deck that I just looked at it and I'm like, that's fun. That's really fun. I think I can do that better, but that's really fun.
Yeah. A person who has recently left the game in our play group, Jeff, he had a Mughals deck, and it was very fun to play against, and it was very complex, and it was very interesting. But the big issue is that if he couldn't keep Sarah on the field, it was just over. Yeah,
Sarah is really the linchpin of this deck, so you've got to put basically all of your effort into making sure you have Mughals and making sure you have Sarah.
Yeah.
Without those... it's a little flexible like Onion Knights, but you certainly still will always kind of somehow make your way back to Sarah, or if you don't, you lose.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to make this deck expensive. Like, you could do it as an entire, back row to have them all different colors and then run good stuff in the front row. A main issue that Mughals have is outside of Sarah, they don't have any synergistic forwards.
Right.
Every Mughal... forward is usually a standard unit. Mm-hmm. Like there's Moogle Knight from FFT, or FFTA rather. There's just outright Moogle from Opus 4. But the thing is, they don't synergize with other Moogles, they're just draw fodder.
Yeah, you just have Moogles. Yeah.
So the deck's very complex. If you come from a game, kind of like Legends of Runeterra, or maybe even a Hearthstone, where you're very used to very diligent deck building, this deck's really good. It gives you a lot to kind of sink your teeth into. It's really good if you're really good at figuring out ratios of cards.
Yeah, this is a fun deck where if you want to sit down and play it over and over and over and make minimal changes between and take notes and really get an experience with the game itself through this lens, by all means, Mughals. Do the Mughals.
Yeah, Mughals is great for it.
So, but moving on, something that everybody and their brother was riding with Opus 5.
Yeah.
We have the Scions.
Yeah, this was the budget deck for a while, especially back in Opus 5.
It was meta budget.
Yeah, it was
what it was.
Budget. So the reason why we're calling it meta budget is almost every variant of it is based around a starter deck. So Final Fantasy XIV got 2 starter decks that were focused on... Well, the second one wasn't focused on Scions, but Final Fantasy XIV has 2 starter decks, and now is getting a dual deck in the near future.
Still have 4.
Yeah, so they're going to have 4 decks, essentially. One focuses around the job class Scion of the Seventh Dawn. Yep. Another one is just more 14 synergy.
Yeah, it's generic.
But the most popular one was Lightning Earth, which was what the first deck was. So it has tons of search. It has a lot of good synergies within the jobs. Minfilla is such a good card that people want to run 5 of it. That's a really old joke for
That's a joke
players.
We just won't let die.
And I still see it on the Facebook groups and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was just a 4-drop backup, allows you to search a Scion, and then you can tap it and break it to break another forward if you control 5 or more Scions of the Seventh Dawn.
Which isn't too hard.
Yeah, especially in that deck. But when it comes to forwards, it's mainly focused around Ida, who's a 2-drop 2k forward who gains 2k for every Scion of the Seventh Dawn that you control.
Correct.
And then also deals half of her power to a dulled forward whenever she attacks.
Yep.
But you have a lot of ways to search her out. Benfilla, who we mentioned before, her good Papalymo just directly searches her out.
Yep.
And on top of that, as we mentioned Well, as we mentioned in another episode, Earth has a lot of recursion, so it was very easy to get Ida out and constantly have Ida be scary.
Yeah, well, now with Kusith as well,
Yeah.
like, I'm curious, I haven't seen any builds that utilize that, but I'm sure they exist.
Yeah, but Ida was very good, Papalymo was very good, and then you also had access to Urianger,
Yes.
who allowed you to play monsters and play them for free, basically.
Right.
And then the original Alphinaud and Elisay.
Yes.
Who would be able to give your forwards haste, or your Scions haste, which in any deck is very good.
Yep. Later, people used Sid Previa with those two in Mono Lightning to just turbo out 3 to 4 backups, depending on how you played it. And that is, by all means, usable in this build as well if you want to.
Yeah. And then down the line, we got Y'shtola. That was the next set right after that deck came out, so I believe that was up with 6.
It was 6, yep, the Earth Y'shtola.
Yeah, Earth Y'shtola, who was a wonderful addition. There's several Thancreds that we can use in the deck.
Multiple Thancreds.
But there's just a lot of synergy in the deck. There's a lot of 14 synergy, there's a lot of Scion synergy, and while we don't see as much Scion synergy anymore, we're probably still going to get some more. We've got 2 new starter decks coming out. Like, we're probably going to get some.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, the Lightning Earth version, you can also tech in some generic 14 stuff. But what he leans more on generic 14 is the Lightning and Fire version.
Yeah.
Which it heavily leans on the Lightning side over Fire. Yeah. It's not very reliable. But, at least you can have more, I guess you can put more pressure on stuff like Estinian, Fordola, and some of the other more high-powered, out-the-gate forwards, rather than trying to rely on, searching, playing, and buffing Ida.
Yeah. The first deck that we meant, Lightning Earth, was more focused on just slowly building up a dedicated base of Scions and then cashing it in mid to late game.
Yep.
Lightning Fire is more so putting down mild threats constantly. And they're usually hasty, they're usually powerful, they can usually attack over stuff, and then having to worry about that. This is based on the second Final Fantasy XIV deck, or starter deck that we received, which also has a little samurai synergy in it, too.
A little bit, yeah, but
which we'll talk about
get there
a bit more later, but, it still very much so exists.
For sure, yeah. Really, I think the biggest downside of the Lightning Fire version is that it doesn't rely on the backups in the job. And so that can be a weakness, but it's definitely not a strength.
Yeah.
So it's just something to pay attention to.
Yeah, you do have a little bit more versatility in what backups you want to run.
Right.
In Lightning and Fire, with that kind of theme, you don't have that many very good options.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck to what the good stuff is.
Yeah, there's some solid ones like Ace and...
Well, yeah.
Ace and, a couple other ones, but like Ace. But outside of that, it's just standard units and just generally okay cards instead of the dedicated, very good ones that Earth Lightning had.
Right, but moving on to the final variant of Scions, we have the Fire Earth one. And so this is a similar situation to Lightning Fire, where you'll lean mostly on your forwards, and your job backups being there really only to facilitate the conditional abilities.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll have, a good, strong base of cards to work with here. And you're going to have just as much search, if not more search, than you normally would.
Yeah.
But your linchpins here are going to be Alphinaud, Alisay, Lys, and Magisa.
Yeah.
Magisa not really being a 14 card, if I remember correctly. But
it's 3, I want to say.
Yeah,
3 or 6.
You'd know better than I would. But Magisa helps to turbo out Alphinaud and Alisay, really. The forward versions, the Fire versions, not the backup Lightning versions.
Yeah. If you really like Alphinaud and Alisay, this is probably a good build for you. The Lightning Alphinaud and Alisays always played kind of a backseat role, their backups, etc.
Yep.
But in the Fire Earth build, they help you search. They're a mini engine within themselves. And this, kind of similar to Lightning Fire, doesn't use too much from the starter deck? From the first starter deck?
It's a lot of commons and rares from standard boxes.
Yeah, and you're running it more so just so you have the Fire Earth synergy.
Right.
You could even probably build an EX variant of this deck.
Yes.
But once again, this is just another budget deck. This is one that hasn't been explored as much as the previous two. So, there's a lot of room for creativity. The first one that we mentioned, Earth Lightning, is good, and as we mentioned before, it was meta. But the issue is that it really boxes you in of, I need to have 5 Scion backups, I need to have, these, 10 forwards.
Right.
How else am I gonna like work with
Yeah,
this?
it's a very rigid archetype, no matter which version you build of Scions. But if you like that, if you like more of almost a flowchart type deck,
That's
then
a really good way
this
of
is
putting
this
it.
is what you do.
Yeah, it is very much so like a flowchart.
Yeah. So moving on though, because I think we've pretty much talked that one to death.
Now we get into the ones that people really like.
Yeah. Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
So the first one is, and I'm sure a lot of people clicked onto this video hoping for this one, Dragoons. The Final Fantasy is just famous for their Dragoons. Dragoons is like the cool edgy boy class.
Yep.
And I'm not being mean about it. I play Dragoon in Final Fantasy 14. I love Dragoons, love my boy Kane. I love all of it. And Dragoons in this game are interesting. So the first build that always comes to mind, and it's the oldest build, is Mono Lightning. It's very forward synergy centric. Dragoons are not only strong in numbers, but because of numbers, they buff each other, they buff themselves, they get effects if you have X amount of Dragoons, they deal damage if you have X amount of Dragoons.
Yep.
And until very recently, it was all incredibly forward centric. Now we've been getting some more backups.
Yeah, we have.
In these last couple sets, which is great, because that's kind of exactly what
That's
Dragoons
literally
need.
all. That's what it needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So most cards in the deck are like commons and rares. A few cheap H's. Yeah, Estinian is the big L that kind of stands out.
Yeah,
to
he's
me.
the really, really big one.
But I struggle to say that he's like he's 100%.
He's not 100% necessary.
Yeah.
And you can proxy him with the promo.
Yeah.
Of the cheaper version, if you want.
If you're running Mono Lightning, you could just run the cheaper version.
Or you could, yeah, you could. So yeah, it's a very rigid, like one line, like one track tunnel vision mind, type deck. But it's cheap and easy to build.
Yeah. It's very similar to Chocobos in that sense. Of, like, you just want big boys. You want big forwards that are going to be just doing a lot of damage, or they're going to be hard to stop.
They have a lot of keywords like haste and first strike, which is cool.
Yeah, that's the one thing that they do really have over Chocobos is that there's a lot of haste and first strike in it.
Yeah.
And then you also have some named Dragoons like Kane and Freya, who also kind of help with the Dragoon synergies.
Yeah, for sure. So the other variant of this that we have, though, is the Lightning Water variant. And so this one is similar to the Mono Lightning, but with the added benefits of having some water staples, mostly being summons and backups. And you have the multicolor Freya if you should want to throw that version in, as opposed to just the standard Lightning Freya.
Yeah. And then there's an outright water Freya as well.
Right, there is.
And I don't remember
there
if
is.
I can't remember if it's like completely Dragoon synergy. I thought I had 9 synergy.
I think it's more 9 synergy because it's from that cycle of 9 synergy that was there.
But yeah, like the addition of water helps. It's not 100% necessary,
right?
But it's at least at the time when Dragoons only had so many options. It was quite nice.
Yeah, for sure. Also, with the addition of water, you get some standard unit support.
Yeah.
Which Lightning basically has none of. I think Lightning has absolutely no standard unit support. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Lightning, not much.
Like I think there's 2 cards that mention it.
Yeah.
But you have Brawn.
Yeah.
So some of the Dragoons that are named Dragoon don't have the same job, and vice versa. So
the Water Freya gives your Dragoons haste.
Okay.
And something that we neglected to mention about the Mono Lightning, and also applies to this one, is another recent card, Aranea.
You're right. Well,
Final Fantasy 15 fame.
Easy to get your hands on, though.
Yeah, she's a very easy to get your hands on card. She works very well with Dragoons, even though she doesn't directly support them. She could revive a Dragoon, and on top of that, she's cheap as all hell because she was a box topper. Everybody has 3 or 4 of them. I have 2 sealed ones that I just hold on to for the hell of it. But yeah, if you came here listening for Dragoons, like you don't have a lot of venues, but it's a deck.
It's definitely a deck, yeah.
And it's definitely cheap.
Oh yeah, for sure. So moving forward, we have another warrior style type of card or archetype. We have the ninjas, and this one only has one variant that is out in the in the big leagues. That's the Lightning Wind version.
Yeah.
This one is another very, I want to say, it's more of a blend between flowchart and like straightforward.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really do much other than be aggro as hell, swing under stuff, be hasty and very angry. And yeah, there's also the added benefit of being able to easily replace one when another dies. Ninjas have been in and out of the game, like popularly, if that's a word. In and out of popularity, man, that's definitely a word.
There you go.
Since Opus 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Because Opus 3, there were popular ninjas. I think it was Opus 6 or 7 had some ninjas, but not really that big.
Yeah, and
then we have
the support
now.
that they get is like 1 or 2 cards.
Yeah, it's only 1 or 2 at a time.
It wasn't until very recently that we actually started.
Yeah.
Because we got Edge. Edge is a very good,
Yeah, that was Opus 10 or
I
9?
want to say 10.
Is
Yeah,
it 10, 9 or 10? Yeah.
That was 10.
Okay.
Because I pulled it out of my tin in one of the... I specifically remember opening it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like, this is admittedly the one... like area that we don't have too much experience with. We haven't really built ninjas.
Yeah.
Every other deck on here we've either built or we've played against
with,
or
yeah.
played with.
Ninjas we haven't seen like really since Opus 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Like we have a buddy who used to play those religiously. That was his only deck.
Yeah. But now it's very aggro-y. It's a lot more of a deck than it used to be.
Yeah.
Before now it was basically just swing under stuff. That was about it.
Which was a threat as on its own back then.
Yeah, which was fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one. I'm sorry to say we can't help you out too much for it, but definitely it exists. It's definitely out there.
Yeah.
People build it, people run it, and it is very, very, very cheap.
Oh yeah.
I don't even think the deck has like an L really. I can't think of just support an L.
I know it has a couple. I think they're optional.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm gonna check out Hiftex, but while I check that, let's move on to the next one.
Moving on to
another one I'm sure people have been waiting to hear for. We just got 3 in a row of like people's favorite classes.
Yeah, or what we perceive them to be at least. We have Samurai, which like the ninjas have taken off in Japan in particular. This only has so far a mono fire build, and this one has pretty good synergy, and it's designed as a mid-range threat deck. So it has the benefit of being in fire, which is awesome. And of course, that grants you access to all of the summons and backups that you would want in fire, which, hey, if you've heard our fire episode, you know, that should tell you quite a bit about what is available here.
Yeah.
On the cheap as well.
Still pretty full from that humble pie I ate for saying that samurais were going to be bad.
Yeah, right?
But, yeah, samurais have actually become a meta deck. Very cheap meta deck.
Yeah, for sure.
Relatively cheap meta deck. There are still a couple expensive cards in it. Tenzin, the main card in it, is still about $5.
Which isn't that bad at all.
It's not bad, especially compared to other card games.
Yeah.
And he's a, like almost mandatory 3 of.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that, you could just run a lot of other good mono fire stuff. You're even running stuff from the Final Fantasy XIV fire deck.
Yep.
Such as Hien.
Yeah, Gosetsu.
Gosetsu is the other one that searches Hien.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a very, very solid deck.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say it's under like $50.
I would definitely say it's under 50.
Being a bit extravagant. I'd almost borderline say under like 30 if it wasn't for Tenzin.
I would say without Tenzin, if you throw in the Ifrita package, yeah, you're paying like $35 probably at most. Everything's bulk basically.
Yeah.
If you're going with the fancy stuff, you can get up to like 50, 60, and then about peaks there. So yeah, it just depends. But Samurai's good.
Yeah, and this is another deck that it will probably keep getting support.
Yes.
They see how much people like Samurais. Samurai is a very popular deck. It had an entire like 14 expansion about it. So
yes.
Yeah, so you could probably play this deck knowing that you're probably going to get at least something.
Yeah, you're gonna get bits as we go along. Probably maybe not the next set, but you know, a few sets at least in the future. This is being recorded after Opus 12, so you know, keep that in mind.
Yeah, but talking about decks that will continuously get support, we got monsters.
Yes.
Monsters are artifacts. There are enchantments. They're that thing that's not a forward, that's not a backup, but sits on the field, and something about that just makes people love them. And on top of that, they're the iconic Final Fantasy monsters.
Yeah,
I want to play Flam.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to play other famous monsters like Bahamut's or Bums or Laic.
Sure.
Sure. But monsters largely can be almost any color. Most of the support for it is in water.
Yes.
Specifically.
Well, the support for it, specifically monsters, are obviously in every color.
Yeah.
So,
but mostly we see it in water. We see a little support for it in ice as well. But when it comes to water, at least you have cards like Realm that can help search out monsters. Gao, who gets more powerful with monsters. Mira, who reduces the cost of monsters. Strago...
He does stuff for Realm.
Yeah, he does stuff for Realm, or you could even just use him to play monsters for free, using the new bounce one.
Right.
Fisher is just outright monster support, and like, there's even the new Lightning Water Urianger, who just gets monsters back.
And the old Urianger is lightning, but you can tech that in with different options.
That's the thing, is you're almost always going to be using water as a base for the deck. But the second color is always...
Second or third. Some people do rainbows.
Yeah. Yeah. A big one that always comes to my mind is there is a water ice 6 deck. That's pretty cheap. It has some expensive aspects to it if you want to get the locks and everything. It can get pricey, but budget-wise, it's very easy to build. The Setzers are really cheap. Realm is very cheap. The not expensive Celeste is very cheap. The not expensive locks are very cheap.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's so many options available.
Yeah. So it is very gimmicky. It's very matchup dependent. There are some decks where you're basically just going to win because the opponent can't interact with monsters at all.
Right.
There's going to be other matches where they don't care that you're interacting with their monsters, or that your monsters are interacting with them, because they'll just push forward or too control-y, etc., etc.
But it is great against board wipes.
It is amazing.
Shantotto? What's a Shantotto?
Welcome back to MonsterCast. Mono Water MonsterCast.
Yeah, right?
But yeah, just the fact that they can almost completely avoid board wipes, that they're in that weird category of monster, so they're not affected by most things. It's nice, but...
Yeah.
I think its main weakness is that you're not putting out so many forwards, so it's a bit harder to block with it.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of setup, but if you enjoy monsters, if you enjoy control-y elements to your decks, monsters is great. I've been playing monsters for a while, and I've always loved it. There's also the Kefka.
The 5-drop Dark Kefka, Citra, you have to...
There's the 8-drop Kefka that could break
8-drop Kefka, yeah. You have tons of different options for interacting with summons here.
Yeah.
Or with monsters, rather. Sorry, words.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like there's basically a case for every other color as long as you're running water. Lightning has Urianger, and also has a lot of very good monsters, just like the Dark Knight and the Behemoths. Wind has Laic. And Laic, what's the other one? The 2-drop. I forget it. You have Kobold Droid Yin, which is very good.
Kobold Droid, for sure.
You definitely have your options. Obviously, water has tons of...
Unsaganashi. That's what you were thinking of. I was like, it's a really weird word. Yeah. It's probably not English. Yep, there we go.
Blue has options such as like Tonberry, Schrodinger stands out, Zombie Whale? I believe that was the name of it. It's a good draw.
I'd say Sahagin over Zombie Whale.
Sahagin's another good option. Yeah. Earth has the Hill Giants, has the Giants, has Calcabrina if you want like a named monster.
Yep.
I think Fire is really the only color that doesn't have a lot of good monsters.
Water also has Ozma.
Oh yeah, you have
Ozma. You have, for Earth, Luminous Puma. Fire, you have Librorian, yeah.
Fire has the bombs, but that's about it.
Fire has the bombs and goblins.
Yeah,
Don't forget the goblins.
And then in Ice, you have really good monsters like Scale Toad. You have the Flans that can search out other Flans.
Yeah, you have a lot of the monsters from 13 are all pretty solid. There's a lot of those in Ice.
Yeah. So if I had to recommend any colors for monsters, it'd be either Water Lightning or Water Ice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you could basically build it however you want. As long as you're running water, you can basically run whatever else you want.
Yeah. So next we have, though, is a deck that I have built and modified through many sets.
And I'm going to let you talk about it.
Prish Power. So this is a mono Earth deck that is 100% centric and revolving around Prish. She is always, in one form or another, present on the field, and you can fill in the rest of the forwards however you like. So basically the idea here is get the cheap Prishes out, and as the game progresses, you replace her in one form or another with the more powerful, expensive Prishes, working your way all the way up to the 9-drop that gets cheaper for every Prish in your break zone. That's a really powerful card, in cheap decks, of course.
Yeah.
One of the favorite things that I found was fun was adding Vanille and Hecatoncheir, both versions, for some sticky field situations. So, Vanille, if she's going to die, you can search your deck for a Hecatoncheir, sacrifice that instead, and Vanille stays.
Yeah, mill it, which is really
Yeah,
good.
it's basically just mill. And so if you have a full 6 Hecas in there, it's a pretty solid. You can get a lot of Vanilles sticking around.
Oh yeah.
You also have a lot of FF11 synergy available. So Star Sybil and Ajudo
Marijudo, yeah.
Yeah, are both obviously widely available cards out there.
Star Sybil is a bit expensive though. She's
Star Sybil,
sitting at, closer to 5, and you preferably want her at a playset. She's very good.
Right.
She's very.
But you can tech in some monsters. You can tech in stuff like Arden, either variant of Arden. Dark and light cards are fine in this deck. The only downside is that you can only at any point have like 4 to 5 forwards up. So if your opponent has more than that, or they have stuff with first strike or whatever, you are relying exclusively on getting much, much bigger than them with just a few cards. So if your opponent can get around your few forwards, too bad.
Yeah. The something that we should clarify: if you're a new player and you're listening to this and you kind of want to get into the game, we have something called the Legend Rule. This is also present in Magic. 2 cards can't share the same name unless they're a standard unit, or they have
a little symbol.
A little symbol for it. So, for example, you can't have 2 Prishes out. You can't have 2 Shantottos out.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of makes this deck a little rough. Because, you really like your Prishes, but you can only have 1 out at a time.
Exactly.
And if the opponent dulls and freezes it, if the opponent finds a way to basically stop you from being able to use it but not breaking it, then you can't really do much with it.
Yeah, so that's the downside of this deck, but on its own, it's a really fun, cool deck to experiment with. I keep updating it between set releases just because I like keeping it around. I like playing with it. If you're playing with a deck of similar like monetary value, like in the say like a price bracket, it's super fun. Against similarly powered decks.
Really fun deck to bring to like budget match or even Pauper tournaments.
Yeah, bring to Pauper.
A lot of the Prishes, I think there's one Prish that's an L, which is incredibly cheap. I think it's like $1. And I think that's like it. I think all the other ones are like commons and uncommons.
They're all really cheap. You'll heroes mostly.
Yeah.
Commons and heroes.
Yeah.
But we have another Mono Earth for you guys, which is in the monks category.
Yeah. So I believe it's Aaron who's been building it, and he's been experimenting with it.
Aaron and somebody else. I forget who.
So monks, they're one of those decks that has gotten like a little support every here and there. Like we see it come back every here and there. It gets, a new backup. It gets a new forward every here and there. And now the big one is we just got the new Ursula, which despite being an L is incredibly cheap. To the point where her full arts, which are 1 to 2 per box, are like $10.
Not even. We checked before we recorded this. It was like what, 7, 8?
Yeah,
it was pretty low.
Ursula is insanely cheap, and she's kind of like she's really the centerpiece of the deck. So monks, much like Prish, are very focused on being brave and having buffs. There's a little search. There's a little free value in plays. And you're basically just putting out forwards that are going to be hard to remove or hard to take down. They're going to be hard to attack over. But much like the Prish deck, it has a couple of issues. The monk support is limited, even with Ursula, even with Yang, even with a lot of the newer support that we have.
Yep.
We still don't have a lot of support. And we don't have anything similar to like Tenzin and Samurais, where we have one really, really good monk card that makes the rest of it playable. We have a lot of okay monk cards.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting to note about this one, a lot of the Prish cards have specials. So if you keep drawing Prish, you can discard those Prishes for that effect, build up for that 9-drop Prish and make it cheaper.
Yeah.
The monks, most of them don't have specials.
Yeah, the only one that has a special is Yang. Actually.
Yeah,
and
the 4-drop Yang in particular.
The 4-drop, the 5-drop Yang, I believe, has a special as well. And then
it might.
Ursula, the old Ursula has one that you need Yang on the field for, so it's only so useful.
Right.
But, that's the issue is, it's fun. And it's a very cheap deck. It's a very good deck. It's a very simple deck if you're really learning.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If you're coming from Magic and you like mono green Stompy, this is probably a good deck for you. Where you're just gonna have big boys that are just really hard to take down.
Yeah,
But the deck does have its issue with control.
For
and
sure,
just
yeah.
outright breaking is the other.
yeah. If your opponent doesn't let you get that board set up, you are basically hosed.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when playing this, or modify it to the point where it's not really monks are just an engine in the deck.
Yeah.
Your call. But that's
Or maybe even splash some Precious into that.
yeah. Hey, go for it. Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
But moving on, we have a bit of a rainbow here.
Yeah, this is a deck I was quite fond of. This was my main deck for a while.
It was, yeah.
And we still see this deck pop up every other opus. It reminds me of like Zoo in Magic or Hearthstone. But we have Golbez. So Golbez is traditionally a rainbow deck. Usually has a center of like mostly lightning and earth, but only so much.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So Golbez is a 6-drop 9k lightning forward, and then when he is broken, you get to play up to 4 2-drops from your deck as long as the 2-drops are different colors. So Golbez is like a threat. He's a big boy, but when he dies is when the deck really turns on.
Yeah.
So you're running like very few summons. Depending on what build you're running very few backups. We've been seeing some more backup-centric builds of it.
Yeah. Earlier builds just had no backups.
Yeah.
Remember the Oops All Forwards was
the original
was the
builds
joke.
were Oops All Forwards, where I believe you're running 1 Odin, 1 Cosmos, and then all forwards.
Yep.
And it was just to facilitate Gilgamesh, which was another very popular card at the time.
Yeah.
But now that we don't rely on Gilgamesh anymore, now that Gilgamesh has kind of fallen off, people are running a lot more backups and summons that allow you to break your own Golbez in exchange for something. We're seeing Famfrit being run, which is break your Golbez, break another forward.
Yeah, which that one's just 100% value on that.
Yeah. But this deck, it's all about swarming the field with like these big, hard to kill 2-drops, and we're seeing more and more better 2-drops every set.
Oh yeah.
This is another one of those decks that every set it's gonna get better, because we're gonna get another 2-drop that may or may not find its way into Golbez.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I feel it's funny how a lot of cards in this game lately have been designed like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think it's quite a 3-drop. Let's put it at 2-drops, and then the card releases and everyone's like, Golbez.
Yeah,
it's like, and the designers are just like, oh yeah, oops, yep.
Another fun thing that it hasn't come up so much in the past, but now is quite important, is that Golbez has a clause in which the forwards that enter the field don't get their enter the battlefield triggers, and that helps with cards like Shadow Lord,
Right.
who is a 2-drop 9k, whose only drawback is that when he enters, he allows the opponent to play a 2-drop backup.
Or not now.
Or not. And so Golbez can prevent these issues with playing cards. There's some low-costed cards that have really bad ETBs, or there's these low-costed cards that can only enter the field under a certain condition, and he's able to just kind of ignore that and say, too bad you're coming onto my field anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, here's Rathatin, here's White Tiger Hillisea, here's Luso, and here's an Onion Knight. So this is another very fun deck. It's a very unorthodox deck.
Yep.
I do have to admit, it's not great if you want to learn the game.
Yeah, it's definitely more advanced.
But if you are looking for a pet deck, if you are looking for a deck that you could bring specifically for the people who don't play as much, or if you do want a fun deck to start on, Golbez is your guy.
Yeah,
Golbez himself is a little expensive, but the rest of the deck is dirt cheap.
Yeah, and playing against it can be a real chore, real slog.
Yeah.
I think this deck in your mono ice, when you used to play just mono ice, are the decks that you and I would draw or get to like our final like 2-3 cards every time.
Yeah.
I think the only time I've really beaten your Golbez is when I've decked you out.
Yeah, that was a lot of it. It was either you turn off my Golbez or you deck me out, or both.
So moving on, though, we have the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Shikaries.
Shikaries, yeah. We're moving from a very old deck to an incredibly new one.
Yep, this one's fresh.
Yeah, so Shikaries is an Earth-Wind deck. It's mainly focused on draw power and value. And the reason for that is that it's actually built around an infinite engine. It's built around an infinite.
Yep.
So the idea behind the deck is that there is a certain infinite if you use Miyun from Opus 5. I believe it's Opus one Riku who allows you to bounce backups.
Yep, the forward.
Yes. And then White Mage and another White Mage. So the most recent White Mage from Opus 12 is if you've played 3 or more cards this turn, or cast 3 or more cards this turn, you get to untap 3 backups. And then you use that along with another card called Tilica, another very budget card, 10 cents. And Tilica allows you to tap them, and then all of your characters cost 1 less this turn.
Yep.
So you're able to create this infinite mana engine where you're drawing a card every time you do it. So you have... Basically, you play a White Mage, untap. You play a White Mage, you untap. If you've played 3 already, otherwise you just need them on the field. You have Tilica tap, so everything costs 1 less. And then you play Miyun to bounce your Riku, or you play Miyun just for value.
Mm-hmm.
Then you play Riku, bounce it all back to your hand. Everything costs 1 less, so you quickly tap out everything. The White Mages are untapping everything. And you create an infinite draw engine and infinite mana.
Yeah. And so that by itself is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
But then you have to consider that the name of the deck comes from the 3 Shikaris, X, Y, and Z. Hey, congratulations, Final Fantasy, you have Xyz monsters now. It's the joke I made in work chat. And so when they're all 3 on the field, if you party attack with them, they burn for 3, which is unblockable. Yeah. So your opponent has to decide, okay, do I take a 4th damage? Do I block it? Whatever. But it doesn't matter because they're still taking 3 regardless.
Yeah, they have to get rid of the Shikaris before your battle phase starts.
Basically, yeah.
There's not much they can do.
Right, yeah. So that the party attack hitting face would just be a bonus because you're burning 3. All the expensive cards in this deck are completely optional. And optimal path for upgrades are also plentiful. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Earth Wind has been around a long time.
Yeah.
You know, that's been explored to death.
Yeah, the main core of the deck is very cheap. And the infinite combo is very cheap. And the Shikaris are very cheap. It's just when you want to build, when you want to start putting in the place out a Star Sybil.
Yep.
So you can get Shantotto, or you want to run Semalafina, Aparuru, like all these other cards to just kind of help facilitate the combo. The variant that I've been running uses Eldnarsh.
Yeah.
Eldnarsh is a very cheap card.
Right, because you can do 2 turns. And,
he's another L that's
Yep.
at like $3 or $4. But his whole thing is that he gives you a last fortune, where you take an extra turn, but at the end of that extra turn you lose.
Ty, the special is called Paradise.
It's technically called Paradise. The magic card is called... I forgot what I just called it, but
wow,
Final Fortune.
Good job. All right, yeah.
Or at least Final Fortune is a variant of it. So you're able to build up like this infinite. You have all these cards, and then you just slap down Eldnarsh, take an extra turn, swing in with everything. Take the extra turn, swing in with everything.
Yep.
You win.
Yeah. Playing against this is really funny. Playing with it, I'm sure, is equally fun.
It's fun, but it's frustrating because you know, the second your Miyun goes into damage, you're upset. The second you lose a Shikari, you're upset.
Right.
Like it's hard to do because the deck, at least my variant of it, is very fragile.
Yeah.
If you really like combo, if you like combo in other games, this is a good deck for you.
Glass cannon combo.
Yeah, it is a very glass cannon combo. And there, as we mentioned before, there's ways to make this deck more expensive. There's a lot of upgrades for it. Shantotto, Opus 1 Shantotto specifically, Star Sybils, Creel is another one. There's a lot of cards that can go into this deck.
Yeah.
And make it better. It's just getting your hands on them.
Yeah, exactly. So... Moving on to an archetype, though, that basically everybody can get their hands on, like similar other ones in this whole video.
Yeah.
We have Viking Layla. And there's 2 versions of that. So
actually, it's called Layla Viking.
Whatever! So we have... both of these versions can theoretically feature Veritas and Neo X-Death if you want to get expensive.
Yeah.
But the budget versions, we have Mono Water and Water Ice. So the Mono Water version is, you know, another one of those decks that are centralized and focus on draw power. Yeah. You get nearly infinite draw power based on interactions, not on, you know, ETBs or other interesting effects.
Yeah.
You have, unfortunately, though, a drawback, which is the risk of decking out very quickly.
Yeah.
Because you're drawing so often.
Yeah, because you're already drawing 2 cards during your draw phase. And then you throw even more on.
It's a pseudo swarm deck, and it's a pseudo control deck. It doesn't know what it wants to be, but it takes inspiration from both of those ideas.
Yeah. The whole deck is basically focused around a card called Layla from Final Fantasy II.
Yep.
And her whole thing is that she lets you play a Viking for free. Now, there's 3 Vikings in the game, a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a 3-drop one. And all of them let you draw a card. The 3-drop one is he draws 1 on enter, draws 1 when it dies. The 2-drop is draws 1 on enter, and the 1-drop is draws 1 on dies.
Yeah.
So you're using this entirely for the 3-drop Viking.
Just about, yeah.
So the idea is that you play Layla, you pitch a Viking to play Layla. Layla gets the Viking back, so you draw 1.
Yep.
And then you use the Viking just as a chump block. You basically just want him as a body, so then you draw your other card.
Yeah.
And then you're running mono water synergies like Kegnazo.
I was going to say that one.
Nicole, I think, is the other one.
Yeah, Nicole.
Nicole.
You have a bunch of other cheap water cards that you can throw in there. You can do standard unit support if you want.
Standard unit support actually works very well in the deck. Oh, yeah. People were running Gladiators.
Yeah, Gladiator.
Which is gets 1k for every backup you control. So you were able to just throw out these 2-drop 9ks pretty easily.
You could do a monsters variant. There's a ton of different ways you could spin this deck.
Yeah.
But its downside is it's not very powerful. Like it doesn't
Not
have any.
anymore.
Yeah, there's not a lot of strength to it, but it is definitely a good way. Like I know a lot of people who they're like, I like a simple game. I like do thing, draw card, play card.
Yeah.
Like that's their deck. This is how this deck works a lot. So, and the other benefit to this is water isn't really popular right now. So should water make a comeback, you'll be ready if you build this deck, because Layla Viking is probably always going to be relevant in water, I think.
Yeah. It's always going to be an option. Like, water, we haven't seen many mono water decks recently. It's always water and something else. And Viking Layla only works in one variant of that, which we'll get to in a second. But like largely it's just it was very good. It used to be very, very meta. Everybody wanted to build mono water. And then now it's kind of slowed down. But there are some cards or some more expensive cards that you could pick up for it are Cloud of Darkness, Opus 5. That's like the big one that
is certainly a big one,
Lena, I think she's cheaper now.
Lena's still she's still expensive.
She is?
Yeah, she's because there's a reason I haven't bought a playset recently.
Yeah, but if you do want to bring up the deck, you've got Lena who could bring back the Vikings, or could even bring back Porum. Porum's another good card.
Porum is another really good card.
Another very cheap one too. Less than $1. Yeah, the deck has a lot of options. And then we'll talk about the variant that saw a lot more play, or a lot more competitive play after the mono water variant went down, and that's Water Ice.
AKA Vice Kings.
Yeah, people jokingly call it Vice Kings. It has the things that made Layla Vikings good.
Yeah.
But it's also running one of the weird abilities of Ice that isn't super present because it's too good, and it's flickering. So there are several cards in Ice that allow you to play back and forward immediately. So with Layla, you just get another Viking. You draw 2, basically, because the Viking leaves the field. You draw 1, it enters the field, you draw 1. It gives you access to Genesis Avatar.
Genesis and Genesis Avatar.
Yeah, Genesis Avatar is a board wipe. Genesis is a dull and freeze. And this also saw a lot of play with
Renoa and Une.
Mind you, all the cards that we're mentioning are at least kind of expensive. With the exception of Genesis Avatar. Genesis Avatar is dirt cheap.
It's up and down. It depends on how many are available.
Yeah, and Genesis, same thing. This is why I feel a little weird mentioning this build. Only because the dawn of this deck was 7-drop Sephiroth, which is the opponent discards 2.
And that one's still $35.
And it's still $35, and you'd flicker it. But you could also still run variants of this deck where you're running Une, which is very cheap, and then you're running the backup Time Mage, which is still very cheap. You have the draw power that Layla Vikings give you, and then you also just have really good Ice cards. Because Ice's main issue is that it just can't. It doesn't draw a whole lot. It's very selective. You're searching, but you're not going to be at the highest card advantage. It's very control. So to have that control aspect and Layla Vikings is quite nice. Yeah.
No, the Nordic Storm that we know as Vice Kings is certainly another one, again, a fun variant of this deck. And you can also tech in the FF6 engine if you didn't mention that. So you have so there's a lot of variables in play, very, very wide upgrade options because you have a whole color of Ice to play with, which has, again, been explored to death. So yeah, I mean, consider how you want to play the game and see if those work out for you.
Really quick before we move on,
Yeah.
a fun factoid, or not a factoid, a fact about Water Ice. That was the first deck that I played against Frank the first time I met him.
Yeah, same.
At the anime tournament. That was a fun... I still remember because... I'm sorry, I'm going to roast you, Frank, for a second. But we were playing and I believe his girlfriend, or at least a friend of his, said, "Oh, are you winning?" And he looked at his hand, looked at his field, looked at me, and he said, yeah, I think I got this one. And then I completely turned that game around. Love you, Frank.
Yeah, no, Frank's a good guy. He's a good player. He's a good player.
He had a mean water.
I hated that deck. I hated that deck so much.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's a bit of an older deck now, but it's still,
at the time, man. Yeah. Opus 8, Opus 9, that was brutal.
Yeah. And now another deck that I think people have been waiting for us to talk about. This is one that I bring up on the Reddit a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And a deck that people ask for on the Reddit a lot.
Yep.
So, Final Fantasy VII Tribal.
And there's 2 variants of it. Both of them are rough customers.
Yeah. And both of them also have a lot of good avenues for upgrades.
Yes, absolutely. So, Ty, you want to talk about... Well, do you want to just talk about both of these?
I can talk about either.
Yeah, you can... I mean, you've played more with both than I have.
I haven't played with Remnants a whole lot, but the first variant is Remnants.
Yeah, I've played against Remnants a lot.
So it's Earth Ice. It uses the Remnants, Laws, Kadaj, and what's the third
Yazoo.
one? Yazoo.
They're right there, Ty. Right there in the notes, bro.
Anyway, so it focuses on Kadaj, Yazoo, and Laws, who all have synergy within themselves. They search, or I believe Kadaj searches out either of them, Laws buffs them, and then Yazoo is just a good 2-drop. And it also uses variants of Sephiroth. Sephiroth doesn't interact with them too much, but it's just a nice card to kind of have around.
Yep.
So they're good by themselves. They get replaced pretty easy. You search them out. It's easy to just run 3 copies of each of them. And then you're also running a 7 deck around it. Earth has a lot of good 7 support. You've got cards like Jessie, which allows you to search out any 7 deck or 7 card.
Yep.
You have the 4-drop Tifa, which becomes cheaper if you have Cloud out, and it's just a good card.
There's a lot of light clouds that you can use too if you want.
There's tons of light clouds that could just deal 7k on enter. That's the Opus 4 one.
Yep.
There's the recent cloud, which is a bit more expensive and would definitely be an upgrade.
Yep. Aerith. You have Aerith options. You can just get back FF7 stuff.
The light Aerith.
Yes, light Aerith.
Light Aerith is an option to this deck.
Yep.
Like it is a bit of a weird build, but there's also a very expensive version of this deck that is very, very good. That uses the 7-drop Sephiroth, who we've mentioned before, $35 card. It uses the Opus 11 Legend Tifa, which I believe sits at $14.15.
Something, yeah. Somewhere
if you want to
there.
get a full art, it's like $100. And tons of cards kind of in that same vein.
No, for
Once
sure.
again, like, this is a deck that you can build, and it might be a little iffy, but you just basically need the, I think it was an Earth-Wind starter deck.
Yeah.
So you basically take the Earth part of that, you put that with some decent ice cards and some 7 synergies.
Yep.
Throw in, I don't know, the cheap Genesis or something.
This is a deck that if you want to start it cheap and stick with it for a long time and keep upgrading it, for sure you'll have options here. Because we all know that everybody and their brother simps for 7.
Yeah.
So,
But the issue with this deck is I like Cloud. I really, really like Cloud. I love Cloud, and I would die for Cloud. However, this deck doesn't run Cloud.
It does not run Cloud.
You have the option to run the light Cloud, but that's about it.
Yeah.
There's an Earth Cloud that doesn't see a lot of play.
Well, if you run the Dark Sephiroth, then you can't run Cloud, basically.
You can't run the light Cloud, at least.
Or Aerith, for that matter.
But if you do want to run Cloud, there is the Fire Earth variant. This was a bit of a famous deck for a while. This is a deck that we've been pushing as a budget deck forever.
Yeah, basically.
And it's called 37EX, previously known as 7th Heaven.
Yep.
The deck is basically built around Tifa Cloud Barrett synergy, and then you also have Vincent. But more so, it's built around getting a bunch of really good EXs. So you have amazing EXs like Barrett, like the Light Cloud that we mentioned before. Vincent has very good EXs.
Yep.
You're running Atomos, which is a very good EX, Ifrits that have really good EXs. The whole deck is that, or the whole concept of the deck is that even when you're taking damage, you're getting
ahead off of taking damage. So your opponent feels like they're putting you behind because oh, 4, 5, 6 damage. Yeah, but they're all EXs, and I'm killing your stuff as you're doing.
I'm killing
you're
your
hurting
stuff.
me.
I'm getting cards back. I'm searching my deck while you're killing me.
Yep.
And this is another archetype that, while it has been seeing a lot of attention recently, it keeps getting more and more cards.
Yep.
Tyro is an amazing addition to this deck, of being able to just hit him into damage and just being like, oh, I'm going to search anything. I'm going to search up my Barret. I'm going to search up my Cloud. I'm going to search up this one card that will just...
Well, and Marlene in the back row can basically recur all the most important cards.
Yeah.
Just about. So, you know, it's the second most reliant on starter cards deck in everything we've mentioned so far.
Yeah.
But oh god, is it fun! And the Fire Earth variant of this is very flowchart, kind of like other decks we've seen.
It
so
can
it's,
be, yeah.
I actually referred to it as more as autopilot in the past.
Yeah.
Because you know you get out Cloud Barret and Tifa, and then you just keep gunning at them.
Yeah.
And
then you take damage.
Then you take
don't
damage.
Block,
you don't block,
you
and
just
yeah,
get value.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this is another deck that I really recommend to like newer players. And you could get the better part of the deck just by buying both of the 7 starter decks.
Yep. Which are about $12 to $13 each right now.
Yeah, and all the other cards that would... I can't really think of that many other expensive cards in this deck. Like, if you want to run the new Almatros, Almatros is a couple bucks.
Yeah, it's all optional stuff.
If you want to run the 3-drop Ifrit, that's an option. But the thing is, other than that, I could just think of, like... I don't know... Braskas, maybe?
If you want to be real hard in the paint.
But you don't really have to.
Yeah, you don't.
That's the thing, is this deck works so well with just its core.
Yep.
And then you just kind of throw on other things you like. You throw on like a Lael or something.
A couple people used to run the Wind Euphies, the cheap ones that played off of Vincent.
Yeah, they were free if you played Vincent.
So, like, that's an option, but, you know, that introduces some weird consistency issues.
Yeah, it depends on how much you like Yuffie, really.
Yeah, just about. So...
yeah, I think its only issue is that people kind of figure it out, and then on top of that, if it doesn't have a lot of protection, like you have some big cards, but the thing is, when they die, you have to pray that you get that Marlene. You have to. You're kind of relying on the EXs a little bit too much.
Well, it's super weak to lightning because lightning targets active stuff, and Tifa gives everything brave.
Yeah.
So when you attack, you're not dulling, and you can't avoid losing your forwards that way.
Exactly.
So there's you know, like everything, it's got, you know, its ups and downs, pros and cons. But overall, you know, it's a fun, cool... Either versions of FF7 Tribal are fun, cool decks that new players should enjoy quite a lot.
Yeah. Though if you're looking to spend less money in the game, Fire Earth is probably the way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
And then to also talk about Fire Earth, we have Waff,
which is our final archetype on the budget list.
Yeah, and this is a deck that both of us have been playing a bit. This is one of the decks that's in my main rotation now.
You have it. My girlfriend Kim plays it. I think like 4 or 5 other people at least in our play group run it.
Yeah.
Obviously Maverick and Matt both run it.
Chocobo Joe ran it at Summoner's Cup.
That's right.
Waff is just one of those decks. It was very popular for a while. Everybody built it. Some of the cards kind of spiked in price. I'm looking at Hane.
Yeah.
But...
Well, you bought out Hane, though, so you're part of the problem.
Shut up. I bought them out so I could give them out to our players.
No, that's fair. That is fair.
So the whole deck is... Now that the hype's kind of over, the deck is still pretty good, but it's not as expensive. The big expensive card in the deck still is kind of Rain, who's the main... centerpiece to the deck. She is, I hate to say it, you basically need this Rain to run the deck.
Yep.
And she is $8 each, 8, 9, 10 -ish.
At time of recording, which isn't that bad, really.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
Like, it could be, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! or Weiss Schwartz or Magic, or
Sephiroth.
or it could be Sephiroth. But, you know, some of the cards in those games get up to like 30, 35 each. And you need playsets to make a deck work, or it won't work at all.
Yeah.
So 8 each, not bad.
Yeah, it sucks, but once you have that, the rest of the deck is dirt cheap. If you want to pick up your Lons are pennies.
Yep.
Sigwardi's pennies, Pelinor's pennies.
Lucen Rorik.
Lucen Rorik are incredibly cheap. Frit, the Ifrits that you need. If you just get the 1-drop Ifrit from Opus, I believe that was Opus 11, that card's super cheap. Like, once again, after the initial investment that is Rain, everything else just kind of falls into place. I think a playset of Hane is like $1 now.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't looked.
Really fallen off.
But yeah, so upgrade path. You're probably going to want to throw in Ifrits, Ku, Sith, and a bunch of other like obvious summons.
Yeah. I don't know how expensive Lonnie is, but Lonnie's a good.
Lonnie should probably go in there too. Yeah. You also have Kadaj and Nail if you want some big threat forwards. And the deck lists for this one, because so many people have played this deck competitively after Worlds of 2019. The deck lists are plentiful and very diverse.
Yeah,
so,
very easy to find too.
Yeah, super easy to pick your poison.
Even now, we're still seeing additions to FF decks with people running their new WAF deck, or they're running WAF anti-Shikari or WAF anti-small things.
Yep.
The deck as a whole is very... Well, number one, it's very fun to play. I love playing this deck.
Super fun.
Everything just kind of falls into place in this deck. I don't want to call it like flowcharty, but ultimately your goal is to basically build a board using WAF cards, and then you just slam down Rain. Rain basically turns on everything. Rain by herself is a 5-drop. I believe she's an 8K.
5-drop AK, yep.
And her whole shtick is that WAF forwards get haste, and then whenever they attack, they deal 4K to something.
Yep.
So you're swinging in with everything, you're machine gun downing their board. Yep. She also costs 1 less for every WAF character you control.
So she can become free.
Yes. Yeah, she's one of the only cards that doesn't have the clause of it cannot become 0.
Yep.
She can become completely free. If you have 5 backups, she's permanently free. You have tons of cards that get her back. Like, the deck does revolve around Rain. So if you do want to play this deck, I hate to say it, but you have to pick up the Opus 10 Rain.
Yep.
But when you get the deck together, when it starts going, and you start realizing, like, oh, I don't need BFA. I don't need these super expensive cards. I don't need Marshritz. I don't need any of this. I can just mow down people with this cheap deck. It's definitely a deck that I think is always worth having in your back pocket, and I feel like it's always going to be good.
It's always going to be at least fun.
Yeah.
For sure. And if you do decide you want to make it more expensive for yourself and, kind of take it down that full final upgrade path, you have options like the 6-drop Minfilia, which ties us back into Scions.
Yeah.
You have BFA, and you also kind of can play the Opus 12 Creel.
It's handy in the deck. We put it kind of because... I don't know if I call it budget. It's $5 each, which isn't terrible for the lowest rarity.
Right.
And it gives you a little synergy. It gives you some synergy with your summons.
Yeah.
And you're not running too many summons, but being able to still recur a Ifrit or something is still super nice.
For sure, yeah.
And Creel also lets you play with the opponent's summons, which is always fun.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all the options we could think of at the very least. If you have other ideas for budget archetype style decks, feel free to throw us a message, throw us a comment, hit us up on Reddit, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah, put it into our Discord.
On our
Discord we have deck discussions. People could post their deck list and we'll talk about it, or other people in the Discord will talk about it. And then we also have Fix It Friday. If you decide, hey, I'm getting into this game, I'm going to build one of these decks, I think this is how it goes, feel free to send it to us on Fix It Friday. We'll talk about it. Kind of bring up, like, hey, maybe you should run this, maybe you shouldn't run this, maybe you should be running more of this.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll probably be having one of those either probably right before or right after we do this.
I would say, it's going to be probably after.
Or by the time the episode comes out.
Yeah. So, so thanks for listening. Hopefully you guys got some cool ideas from this one.
Yep.
Hopefully we can cater more to those budget players. I know 2020 was real rough on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Those of us that didn't unfortunately get a new job like myself. So, if you want to get into this game on the cheap or just build another deck so you can get some, change your play style, this is the way to go with whatever you like on here. Or
if you were really just waiting for someone to say, yeah, you could build Dragoons in this game before you went ham.
Yeah.
You can build Dragoons in this game. Don't worry about it.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys later.
Peace.
All right. Recording. Not just cording, recording.
Recording. And then there's a colon, and then cording as like a backwards C.
What?
Making fun of new anime titles.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a backwards C. The O has a line through it.
Okay, that's actually funny. I wasn't expecting that one. That's good.
Yeah, that's definitely that's a joke to type out and not say.